The bank robbery was dubbed the Heist of the Century, a brilliant scheme devised by a mastermind to break an impregnable vault, driving detectives to the brink of madness. The events of today's story unfolded in a French institution known as Société Générale, one of the most renowned banks in France, boasting branches worldwide. Nestled in the city of Nice on the French Riviera, along the southeastern coast of France by the Mediterranean Sea, this bank was a fortress for many who entrusted their valuables, money, jewelry, gold, and more, within its walls. Customers had faith that their possessions were secure, confident in the bank's robust vault, considered one of the largest and strongest in all of France. However, on that fateful Monday, July 19, 1976, something unprecedented transpired. The day began like any other. The bank officers took their positions, ready for a routine day of business. There were no signs indicating that anything unusual was about to unfold. Everything proceeded smoothly until the bank director and several officers attempted to open the vault to facilitate customer transactions. The main door swung open without issue, but the inner door remained stubbornly closed, refusing to budge. Remaining calm, they acknowledged that this wasn't the first time the door had become stuck. Weighing over 20 tons, the 75-year-old steel door had its quirks, and such issues were not uncommon. Yet, a crowd of anxious customers gathered outside, eagerly awaiting access to their funds. The bank director promptly contacted the vault's manufacturer, which was also responsible for its maintenance. Minutes later, a company representative arrived, ready to tackle the malfunctioning lock. Despite multiple attempts to unlock the door, the expert discovered that while the lock functioned perfectly, the door remained firmly shut, showing no signs of forced entry. Armed with tools, he continued his investigation, attempting to uncover the cause of the malfunction. Meanwhile, the atmosphere outside grew increasingly tense. Frustrated customers began to gather, their patience wearing thin. They wanted their money, their valuables, and no one was explaining the delay. Anxiety filled the air as the expert struggled to solve the riddle of the mechanism, even with the aid of additional personnel sent by the manufacturer. No explanation emerged. The situation appeared baffling and complex. The only conceivable answer was that the door was somehow locked from the other side. An absurd notion, considering it was the sole entry and exit point for the vault. By noon, the decision was made to break the side of the vault door. The workers set to work, and by 3 p.m. they managed to create a small opening through which they could peer inside the vault. What they found defied belief. The bank had been robbed. The bank director wasted no time in calling the police, and within moments the bank was swarmed with officers, including every key policeman in Nice, as they prepared to investigate one of the largest bank heists in history. As they enlarged the hole, the scene within became clear. The robbers had made off with not only the money, but also around 4,000 safe deposit boxes filled with valuables. Scrawled on the wall in bold letters was a quote that read, "Without weapons, without violence, and without hate." The pressing question for the detectives was, how did the robbers gain access to the vault and escape? Investigators noted a hole that opened into a tunnel leading to the city's gas, with the tools the robbers used left behind at the scene. The evidence indicated that this operation had been meticulously planned, with 27 gas cylinders used to fuel blowtorches, ventilation equipment supplying fresh air to the tunnel, and nearly half a mile of electrical cable. This elaborate heist must have been in the works for months, ultimately yielding a staggering haul of approximately $10 million in stolen money, jewelry, and precious metals. It was the largest bank robbery in world history, widely referred to as the heist of the century, capturing the attention of international media. In response to the audacity of the crime, The bank offered a reward of $250,000 for any information leading to the capture of the thieves. This was not only the most significant bank robbery, but also the largest investigation of its kind. High-ranking detectives from across France were summoned, embarking on the daunting task of interviewing thousands of individuals, bank employees, customers who had deposit boxes within the vault, nearby workers, and residents in the vicinity. As evidence mounted, links emerged suggesting that a notorious gang known as the Sewer Rats was involved in the robbery, a group notorious for employing sewer systems in their criminal endeavors. After an extensive investigation, detectives identified several suspects, nearly certain they belonged to the Sewer Rats. However, they remained unconvinced that any of the suspects possessed the capacity to orchestrate such an operation. Consequently, they decided to keep them under constant surveillance as they sought the true mastermind behind this audacious heist. A breakthrough came in early October when two men under surveillance visited a local bank, attempting to sell gold ingots. The bank employee, noticing the ingots matched those reported stolen from the Société Générale, promptly alerted the police. The two men were swiftly taken into custody. Authorities had solid evidence linking the two men to the gang, and they believed that pressing them further could lead to revelations about the other members and the true mastermind behind the operation. The police in France were made aware that they had the authority to accuse these men of crimes they weren't even aware of, and they could hold any suspect in custody while employing any method, legal or otherwise, to extract a confession. Amidst this pressure, a name emerged. One of the two men divulged to the police the name of a photographer named Albert, claiming he was the architect of the entire operation. Without delay, the police sought out the photographer, presenting him with their findings. Albert was taken aback by the allegations, insisting he knew nothing of the robbery. The officers felt a sense of despair. He didn't fit the profile of a criminal, and his demeanor struck them as genuinely innocent. Many people described him as a charming romantic, a devoted husband who preferred the tranquility of the countryside to the chaos of city life. The notion that such a simple man could orchestrate a bank heist seemed ludicrous to the detectives. Nonetheless, Albert was taken into custody, and the investigation began anew. Throughout the questioning, he maintained his innocence. Hours dragged on as the police employed every trick they knew, both legal and illegal, to extract a confession, but Albert remained composed. While he was being interrogated, the police executed a search warrant on the cottage he shared with his wife, discovering illegal weapons and explosives. This discovery provided the police with an upper hand during the interrogation. As mentioned, they had no qualms about employing questionable tactics to secure a confession. They threatened Albert, suggesting they would accuse his wife of possessing firearms and imprison her for years, fully aware of the deep affection he held for her. At that moment, the pressure proved too much for Albert. In a bid to protect his wife, he revealed the truth, confessing that he was, in fact, the mastermind behind the heist. He recounted how the plan had originated 2 years earlier, when a neighbor employed at the bank disclosed that the vault lacked an alarm system. Seizing the opportunity, Albert rented a safe deposit box, which afforded him access to the vault without the watchful eyes of guards. With his camera in hand, he meticulously photographed every corner of the vault and took extensive notes. The vault housed thousands of safe boxes, and Albert understood that he needed a strategy that would allow him to remain unnoticed while he broke into as many as possible. After much contemplation, he concluded that the best way to infiltrate the bank was through the underground sewer system. Nice boasted a vast network of sewers, but they weren't directly beneath the buildings, so Albert devised a plan to dig a tunnel from the closest access point to the bank. Of course, this would be no easy feat. It demanded considerable effort and careful planning. Albert spent weeks traversing the sewer system, searching for a line that would lead him directly to the bank and pinpointing the optimal starting point for his tunnel. The conditions were unbearable. The sewer was so foul that he struggled with the smell, resorting to smoking a Cuban cigar to mask the odor. Ultimately, he realized this endeavor was daunting and pretended to be a contractor, visiting City Hall to acquire a map of the sewer system. This made his task significantly easier. Finally, he located the nearest sewer branch to the bank and identified the perfect spot to start digging, a 30-foot tunnel. Though the distance was manageable, the challenge lay in the fact that the digging would take place beneath one of the city's busiest avenues, where the noise would inevitably draw attention. With the plan in place, but lacking the means and manpower to execute it, Albert traveled to Marseille to meet with the leaders of several gangs, including the sewer rats. They were intrigued by the plan and agreed to assist him in exchange for a substantial cut of the haul. They promised to provide the necessary manpower and equipment for the operation. Albert organized a group of workers to manage the digging site, equipped with radios to alert the others of any unexpected police presence. He took every precaution to ensure the mission would not fail. The digging was laborious, as they worked with traditional tools to minimize noise, but the cramped, hot, and poorly ventilated conditions made the task increasingly difficult. One day, a worker succumbed to the oppressive environment and collapsed, forcing Albert to restructure the operation. He divided the workers into teams, with each team working for 10 minutes before taking a break. A doctor was on standby for emergencies. To enhance working conditions, they brought in ventilation tubes and nearly half a mile of electrical cable, siphoning electricity from a nearby garage to power fans and lights. Albert understood that the success of the plan hinged on the comfort of his crew, so he did everything within his power to make the environment more bearable. After 9 weeks of relentless digging, they finally reached the vault's wall. Elation filled the air, but Albert remained focused, aware that significant work still lay ahead. They needed to break a 12-inch reinforced concrete wall, a task that required jackhammers and drills. Concerned that such equipment might attract attention, Albert ventured above the digging zone and instructed the workers to commence the drilling. His fears proved unfounded. The noise was imperceptible from above. That night, they managed to penetrate halfway through the vault wall, planning to return to complete the task. Finally, D-Day arrived on Saturday, July 17th. They had chosen this day specifically because it marked the beginning of the weekend when the bank would be empty, affording them ample time to finalize their plan. As night fell, they entered the tunnel, preparing to break through the remaining 6 inches of reinforced concrete. The drilling took longer than Albert had anticipated, but by 2 a.m. on Sunday morning, the sewer rats finally break the vault, welding the steel door to its frame. This precaution would give Albert and his gang a chance to escape should anyone attempt to access the vault. They began to crack open the safe deposit boxes one by one, their astonishment growing with each discovery. Jewelry, gold, and cash, everything they had ever dreamed of. The atmosphere shifted to one of celebration as they dined within the vault, feasting like kings on gold-plated cutlery found in one of the boxes. That night, armed couriers arrived to make a night deposit, a routine operation where an armed van would deliver a suitcase full of cash through a small opening directly into the vault, bypassing any scrutiny. It felt like a stroke of luck, a divine gift. The sewer rats continued their meticulous work, laboring for almost 27 hours within the vault. Despite only managing to open 400 out of the 4,000 boxes, they had more than enough treasure to satisfy their ambitions. By 5 a.m. on Monday morning, Albert declared it was time to leave. The bank would open in less than 4 hours. But before departing, he took a spray paint can and inscribed a famous quote on the wall: "Without weapons, without violence, without hate. This act incited a fury among the detectives, who were enraged by the public's fascination with the crime. People laughed and celebrated, greeting one another with the phrase, "without weapons, without violence, without hate," instead of simple hellos and goodbyes. In the end, Albert was arrested alongside the rest of the sewer rat gang. He recounted the details of the robbery to the detectives, expressing a desire to cooperate in exchange for ensuring his wife's safety. During his time in police custody, Albert met weekly with the judge to discuss his state of mind and readiness to cooperate. This arrangement continued for several weeks, and Albert was consistently cooperative, leading everyone to believe he might receive a lenient sentence. In the final meeting before his trial, Albert arrived at the judge's office as usual. He began discussing the robbery and handed the judge 3 pieces of paper containing diagrams of the sewer system, elaborating on how the plan unfolded and where they had started digging. However, the judge appeared puzzled. Seizing the opportunity, Albert calmly moved to stand behind the judge's chair, explaining more clearly, "We started from here and we did this, this, and that, eventually arriving here." The judge, engrossed in Albert's explanation and studying the map, suddenly turned his gaze toward the window behind his desk. In a shocking move, Albert leapt through the window, leaving the judge and lawyer bewildered, unable to grasp what had just transpired. Being on the first floor facilitated Albert's escape, allowing him to land on the roof of a car parked directly below. As soon as he jumped, a friend awaited him on a motorcycle, and they sped away. From that day forward, Albert vanished, eluding the police, who could find neither him nor the stolen loot, as he revealed no information that could lead them to it. Throughout the investigation, reports emerged that he had sent $600 in cash to the owner of the car he had landed on. In the years that followed, Albert taunted investigators by sending provocative photos and messages to various media outlets, including newspapers and magazines. Tragically, his beloved wife chose not to join him in his life of evasion. She remained in Nice, continuing her work as a nurse. The mastermind behind the century's most significant robbery passed away in 1989 from lung cancer. And so, we reach the conclusion of our story. If you enjoyed it, please remember to like, subscribe, and activate the notification bell to receive updates on our new videos.